between India and America, as seen through the Indian travels of Allen Ginsberg in the early 60s. In 2008 and 2009, she was a fellow at the Dorothy and Lewis C. Cullman Center for Writers and Scholars at the New York Public Library. There she researched and wrote The Convert, a tale of exile and extremism, a narrative account of the life of an American convert to Islam, drawing on letters she found in the library's manuscript division. The Convert was a finalist for the National Book Award, and her latest book, Charlottesville, shows how a city most associated with Thomas Jefferson than civil unrest became a flashpoint in a continuous struggle over a nation's founding myths. Can we have a round of applause, please? With her, we have Mr. Subodh Sarkar, who was born in 1958, a survivor of a refugee family. He has published over 45 books of verse in 50 years. He received the Sahitya Academy Award in 2013 for the poetry collection titled Doipone Rodder Dhare. He has been invited to read his poems and papers in numerous prestigious international seminars and festivals, including the International Writing Program of the University of Iowa, the Moscow International Book Fair, Charles University at Prague, and the International Writers Meet at Paros. He has been confirmed as an honorary D.Lit from Banga University and Vidyasagar University of West Bengal. He is a recipient of the Bongo Bhushan of Honor from the Government of West Bengal and the Gangadhar Meher National Award from Shambulpur University, Orissa. Currently, he is the president of West Bengal Kopita Academy and has taught English at City College under the Calcutta University for 35 years and briefly post-colonial literature at the University of Iowa, USA. Can we have an applause for him? And moderating the session, we have Ahon Gooptu, who is a playwright actor. Oh, also. I'm so sorry about that. We have Pinaki sir with us as well. Just give me a minute.
I'm one of their own.
Pinaki De is a graphic designer illustrator working for renowned publishers globally. Winner of the Publishing Next Prize and the Oxford Bookstore Book Cover Prize, he has designed almost 600 book covers to date. A member of the Society for Preservation of Satyajit Ray's archives, his layout designs of Ray's books based on the archival manuscripts are an important contribution helping to preserve his legacy. A Charles Wallace Trust Fellow, his PhD is in comics theory and is one of the editors of the prestigious comics anthology Longform, published by HarperCollins and Penguin Random House, respectively in 2018 and 2022 and 2025. He is also the Indian comics advisor for Mangasia, the biggest ever exhibition on Asian comics curated by Paul Gravett for the Barbican, London, and he juggles his creative work with a day job as an associate professor of English. Could we have a round of applause for him? Ahon Gooptu, as we'll come back to him, is a playwright, actor, theatre producer, and a performance studies scholar from Kolkata. He is drawn to interdisciplinary collaborations for telling queer, brown, immigrant narratives that play with memory in non-linear ways. He has worked with the Stephen Wolf in Chicago, the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C., Taproot Theater in Seattle, Treasure Trunk Theater in New York, and Farmers Alley Theater in Kalamazoo and Rannan. The Red Curtain and Pickle Factory Dance Foundation in Kolkata has been amongst his notable other companies he's been at. He's a founding collective member of Curl, co-founder, former managing producer of the Side B Society, and a former artistic associate of Makeshift Theatre Company. His publications include Labor Day Reunion, which is a writer's work upcoming in 2026, and All That Glistens, Grinnell College Press 2021. His recent theatre credits include Seasons of Love, which has been in Kolkata, New York, Chicago, BAPF 46 and a semi-finalist for BAPF 46. Labor Day Reunion, Item, looking for Taro Mantle, Ek Nayo Safar, Moffat Commission, India, USA, and Japan's co-production, and a subject for a short story, amongst others. Welcome to the Excite Kolkata Meet.
Thank you. So that was like a long introduction, you know. The person we are going to discuss on, you know, of course, needs no introduction. Everybody knows him, right? So who is the real Allen Ginsberg? Very difficult to answer, you know. Completely an enigma, the madness that he sort of encapsulates. I wonder what would be Ginsberg telling in today's America, you know? What he would be doing in today's America. So I think Ginsberg is very relevant, even today. I came to Ginsberg because of Ginsberg's fascination with William Blake. And Ginsberg became Ginsberg because of William Blake, you know, the visionary thing that William Blake had. So today, you know, it's impossible for us to completely, you know, talk about the Allen Ginsberg phenom, if I'm allowed to call him, within an hour, or maybe a bit less. So we'd concentrate on Ginsberg's, you know, journey to India. So in 61, 62, when he was in Kolkata, of course, in Benares and various other places, of course, Bombay. Kolkata was not Kolkata, it was Calcutta. So let's call it Calcutta. And there is, so the anchor of the discussion would be this wonderful book called A Blue Hand by Deborah Baker. I mean, this is one of the finest books you can find on Ginsberg, you know, dressed in Kolkata. And along with me is, of course, Subodh Sarkar. Subodh is one of the luckiest few who went to New York to interview Ginsberg in person. So there are a lot of tales to know. There are a lot of stories that we should know. Because for me, who is not even born when Ginsberg came to Calcutta, a lot of Ginsberg is myth, you know. So we know about Sunil Ganguly and Shakti Chattopadhyay and Malay Rai Chaudhuri, all, you know, doing their drugs and other things, you know, Khalashitola thing in Kolkata. But where is the truth? So I'll start with Deborah, right? I mean, is the sun directly on your face? I mean, yeah. So can you just, it would be better. Is this better? Yeah, I think you feel better. So Deborah, I was just going through the book. I mean, this is the second time I went through this book. And there's an obvious question, which is not there in the book. You have just kept it open-ended. You know, Ginsberg came to India. Now, the obvious question is he came to India in search of his spirituality, you know, in search of God, or whatever he calls it. And he was, of course, suffering after that harrowing trial of Howl, right? It went in America for a long time. So, on one hand, his coming to India with this idea of having spiritual salvation. On the other hand, he's also looking at India. He's one of the few who is going deep. Is it okay? Yeah. So he's also one of the few who goes deep inside in the common man. You know, he's mixing with the common people of India. On the other hand, he's also photographing the beggars and the stuff on the Indian street, which makes him a bit of an Orientalist, right? But what is the reason that he came to India? What do you think is the reason that he came to India, and why India fascinated him so much? It's a straightforward, simple question, which I think everybody has in mind.
So, you know, first of all, he was a world traveler. He went to many, many countries, and I think he had a real genius for travel. But partly, I think it was in response to, you know, this spiritual experience that he had, and he didn't have a way of understanding it. He was alone in his room, and he was sort of stuck in his life, and he was reading Blake, and all of a sudden he heard this voice, which he thought was the voice of God, reading Blake. And it sort of sent him into this kind of a trance and state, and he climbed out on the roof and he began shouting. He shouted in the window of the women who lived in the next apartment. So he just didn't have, and he went to all his friends trying to explain what he had gone through, and none of them, you know, really could. They thought he'd gone mad, he'd gone off his head. So I think he saw India as like kind of the country that had the most expertise in spiritual matters.
Okay.
Yeah, so he wanted to know everything. And of course, you know, it's not a monotheistic nation. It's got many, many gods. So it was sort of his exploration of, you know, figuring out which God he was going to find for himself here.
And an interesting thing is that, you know, he didn't have a plan, right? So when he came to India, he didn't have an itinerary, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, it took him like over a year to get to India.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he just traveled, you know, wherever he liked, and also sort of went deep inside the psyche of the Indian common man. I find it very exciting because initially when he traveled to Bombay, for example, he came to Bombay, right?
He landed
in Bombay, and then he was in his, you know, in his suits and pants and everything, and then he came to Calcutta, and then suddenly his attire changed. He began to go, you know, make inroads into the minutiae of the common people. He began to sort of look at those small things, and he began to blend with the street of Calcutta. You know, what is so special? What he found so special about Calcutta, which make this transformation possible?
Well, I think it was the people that he met here. You know, he met writers in Bombay as well, but it was the writers that he met here who were not the, you know, the fancy Tagore, you know, reading writers. What the Kritabash group called the vegetarian writers. Right. They were, you know, kind of down at the heels. They couldn't believe a white man would, you know, sleep in the hotel that he was staying in. They were shocked that he would even talk to them because they were so poor and desperate, you know, to talk to him. They could hardly understand his accent. You know, he had a very strong New York accent. But yeah, it was, and he also loved the way that he loved going to the burning ghats. He loved the scene at the burning ghats with the ganja smoking sadhus, and he introduced them. They were more like whiskey people, but he introduced them to ganja as well as LSD a little bit later on. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, they had, you know, it was that friendship, which he just was here for months, just hanging out with them.
So Ashok Phokir is, for example, one of the persons, you know, who dedicates his journals, you know, Indian journals too.
Right.
He was the person who took him to Nimtala, and he has this fascination with death, right? He went to Monikornika when he went back to Benares.
I think he was afraid of death, and he wanted to get past that.
Okay, wonderful. So that's just the beginning. Of course, we'll come back to your book and your, you know, there are more things to decipher here. But I'll go to Subodh here. Subodh, one of the persons, of course, who is associated with Ginsberg is Sunil Gangopadhyay, right? So Sunilda, you know, Subodh was, of course, Sunilda was the mentor of Subodh, and there was this story I, you know, read in your interview that you went to New York to interview Ginsberg, and that was arranged by Sunil. I mean, can we get the story of what it's like to meet the person, the man in person?
Allen Ginsberg is probably the single greatest influence on the American voice of poetry since Whitman. I'm not saying that. This is what Bob Dylan said. But Bob Dylan didn't know that Allen Ginsberg influenced even Indian poetry, and especially Bengali poetry. and more especially the poetry of the movement which was initiated by Krittibash Patrika and the Hungry Generation poets. That Sunil was revolutionizing the language of Bengali poetry. So they were badly, waiting for a new language, new idiom. So right at that moment, that Allen Ginsberg landed in Bombay and came to Calcutta. So that was as he said, it was in early 60s, right? Yeah. So what happened to me? As he has said that I met Allen Ginsberg, how I met him. So it was 7 days in New York City with him. And I was a young poet, a young writer, not even from Calcutta. I was from a refugee family. And you must remember that he has written one of the greatest poems for refugees. That is September on Jassor Road. You just imagine, I came from the district to Calcutta and I was trying to settle in the city. So I had already 2 books of my poems published. And right at that moment, it came to me. Suddenly, it happened to me. So my ticket was sponsored by the Ministry of Culture, Government of India, because Ashok Bajpayee was there as Secretary of Culture at that time. And he knew me as a young poet because he invited me to Bharat Bhavan. And the second part is the hospitality in America. How can I get money? I was the son of a refugee family. I had no money to buy even poetry books in my childhood. And I was a stranger in the city, an outsider in the city. You cannot feel the pain of the outsider in the city. It's so terrible. So I had nothing. So at that time, so it was American Center in Calcutta, they organized it. And my hospitality was, in a way, it was taken care of by the the US government. So I just boarded the plane for the first time in my life. I got into the plane and landed not in Agartala or Bagdogra, but in JFK. It was a terrible experience for me. And I was going to meet a man, quote unquote, who was a dangerous man for America and for the whole world. A dangerous man. When he wrote Howl, this is how it was described in New York Times, that he dropped a bomb on the White House and left. So you just imagine when he was writing the Howl in 1957, 56, 57, I just want to give you just the first 2-3 lines, and thank you. Even from these lines, these can epitomize his philosophy. It's again and again, he's talking about madhouse, insanity. It's not a singular insanity. It is the insanity of human civilization, and especially the insanity of the American civilization at that time. I saw the best minds of my generation destroyed by madness, starving, hysterical, naked, dragging themselves through the Negro streets at dawn, looking for an angry fix. And then later in this poem, it looks like Whitman, the lines, long-winded lines, at the beginning, and you in the middle, and then towards the end, you find the structure changes. And he says like that, I am with you in Rockland. The soul is innocent and immortal. It should never die ungodly in an armed madhouse, quote unquote, this madhouse, insanity. everywhere, throughout his life. And it's not just the madness of a poet, it's the madness of the people in power, of the people, those who are destroyer.
Yeah.
I'm not going more into it.
Yeah.
So I landed, just 1 minute.
Yeah.
I landed at JFK, and then I was taken to his small apartment in Manhattan. I found there was a Chinese boy in the room, and Alan told me, wait, sit down. I quietly sat there, and I found like he was like a Purohit, worshipping Kali in his room. The Kali, the image which was taken from Kalighat. And there was a small little harmonium. It's like, the size is like this. A small harmonium on the corner of the bed. And he
Just to interject, there is a beautiful story of harmonium.
Yes.
Deborah's.
Yes. And he was worshipping the god with sweets. That was the beginning. And I sat and I watched him. Then it continued for 7 days with Allen Ginsberg in New York City. Please.
Thank you. We have read that, of course, in Bengali. I come back to Deborah. I mean, this is exciting because, if you read her book, you will find that it has a lot of narrative elements. It reads like a story. I was just telling her, it reads like a thriller. There's so much intrigue in it, right? And you see this gallery of characters, right? So whether it is Molloy Rai Chaudhuri, or whether it's Ashok Phokir, or whether it's, of course, Shunil, Shakti, all of these usual suspects, Jyotirindranath Dutt, Buddhadev Bose as well. But there are also, very interestingly, despite the sexuality of Ginsberg, there are very strong women characters that is there within this book. And Hope Savage, the girlfriend of, or the muse of Corso during that time, and of course Manjula Mitro, the student of Buddhadev Bose, who went with Peter, who fell in love with Peter, or for whatever, stayed with Peter, and also Ginsberg's mother, Naomi. So, can you just tell me, there is this mysterious core within the book that talks about the woman. What makes you, makes you feel that you should write about them? And
About the women? Or?
About the woman.
Yeah, well, I was particularly interested in Hope Savage because she was from the South, from a well-to-do family, but had this restlessness in her, was obsessed with romantic poetry, just took off from the South and ended up in New York for a while, where she met Gregory Corso, who was sort of in Ginsberg's circle of friends, which included William Burroughs and Jack Kerouac. And Corso just worshipped her, and she, sung her praises to Allen, called her the Rimbaud of our day. But then she took off. She went to Russia. She went to Sicily. She went to the Netherlands. She went to Scandinavia. She just was. She went to Afghanistan. She went to what was before arriving in India, and she was and that's where her path first crossed with Allen Ginsberg. And then at some point she just disappeared. So part of when I was writing this book, I was tracing Ginsberg's travels, but I was also looking for her and find out whatever became of her. Where did she end up? Did she ever stop traveling? Did she, did she? Well, I went to her father's obituary mentioned that she was living in Amsterdam, so I went to Amsterdam. I found someone with her name. It was a slightly version of her name, but it wasn't her, and that was sort of the thing that kept me going when I was sort of writing the book. So that was, I felt her voice was, and I only had like about 13 letters that she wrote to a friend in the U.S. to put together her story. But yeah, I'm a woman, the beats kind of leave me out. I was
Yeah,
like,
I agree.
I could relate to Gary Snyder's wife and her frustration with Ginsberg and his carrying on all the time. And Manjula Mitra was another kind of mystery
Yes.
to me. I never figured out what she was desperate to get to America, as Hope was desperate to leave it, and I never was able to find her either. So,
Yeah,
but
so
that was
there is this mystique, there's this, I think they are like absent presences
yeah.
in the entire book, and that makes the book such a wonderful read. It's just not a linear kind of tale. And if you actually look at the book, there is this bit of narrative register, which is, you can say, which imitates, as Subodh tells, the madness, the to and forth, the memory game, the playfulness of
Yeah.
Ginsberg. So, Ahon, can we sort of read?
I think if you read from the beginning, you'll see that my narrative mirrors like the way that he would write in his
Yeah,
journals.
yeah. I think that voice is there. You can,
Yeah.
So in a way, you imitate that voice in order to create that interesting narrative. So, Ahon, please.
It was well after midnight on December 11th, 1962, and Allen Ginsberg, a 36-year-old poet from Newark, New Jersey, had gone off to pee for the umpteenth time. Ginsberg, along with his sometime lover Peter Orlovsky, was hurtling north in a third-class carriage on the Dune Express. The train had started at Howrah Station in Calcutta and would deposit the pair sometime the following day in Benares. Ginsberg had been suffering from kidney ailments for years. In the tiny laboratory mirror behind the heavy black frames of his spectacles, his eyes held a gaze of curiosity, magnified by the power of his lenses. There was his nimbus of thinning hair. There was the heavy woolen sweater over a lumberjack shirt. There was the familiar and worn expression of loneliness. Back in the compartment, Orlovsky was already fast asleep on his bunk, his dirty blonde hair splayed across an innocent face, oblivious to the chill wind that came through the open windows. He was undoubtedly dreaming of the talkative Bengali girl who had come to see them off at the station. They would soon be reunited. Though he had been Ginsberg's companion for 8 years, his feelings for him were now more filial than sexual. Orlovsky was 29. They had spent the last 7 months in Calcutta. In the final days of their stay, Ginsberg had sat on the muddy temple steps below the Howrah Bridge, taking leave of the small shrine dedicated to the Mother Goddess. Above him, the traffic had roared its mantra hum as it rattled across the Hooghly River. As a young man, Ginsberg had formalized an intricate ceremony of leave-taking. So from the bridge, he had walked north to the burning pyres at Nimtala, where corpses, serene on their flower-bedecked litters, patiently awaited his goodbyes. His last evening was spent in a rowdy farewell to the Bengali poets he had come to know. Stumbling out of the toilet and swaying down the corridor as the train clattered away into the night, he returned to his seat to write down his thoughts in his notebook.
And then that's quite poetic. I mean, probably this is the way, sometimes non-fiction should also be written. So please, hand for Deborah. And wonderful. I love the, this is the second time I'm coming back to the book. So the first time I liked it, but now that I'm coming back, I like it more. So there is this, durability. So Subodh, coming back to you. If you look at the Ginsberg story, it influenced Bengali poetry, right? So Shunil, for example, if you look at Shunil's first book of poems, Eka Ebong Koekjon, it changed, right? When the next came on, say, Ami ki rakom bhabe beche achi, he became more confessional, right? And do you think there is a bit of Ginsberg influence on that? That's number one. And number two, also, do you think Ginsberg plays a role in your poetry, in the way you write?
But there was no homosexuality in Shunil's poetry. You just imagine.
I'm talking about the voice.
It was the trial which took place. It was in 1957, right? 1957 trial, obscenity trial.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. So, and obscenity trial, in which it gave us the idea that, even Shurin here, every time he said that poems cannot be obscene. They have to ban Kalidas. So when he was introducing Peter Orlovsky in Kolkata, to the writers and poets of the city, he introduced him as his wife, quote unquote, wife, which was really, it was a terribly shocking idea for the mindset of Bengalis in Calcutta.
The Bengalis were sometimes quite homophobic, I think.
And I'm not going into it, but the point is, it was a terrible description for us, that introducing a man introducing a man as his wife. I met Peter Orlovsky. Peter Orlovsky was, at the time, old. And when I first met at a Manhattan cafe, he was sitting with 5 glasses of beer at daytime. 5 tall glasses of beer, and then after a few words, he said, "Can you sing Ashabari?" The great raga, Ashabari. He learned it in Benares. And he was singing the tunes of Ashabari in the cafe. And suddenly he asked me, "You met Alan?" I said, "Yes." What he was saying about me. I didn't know that they were separated at that age. And I never knew that I was a young poet, young writer from India. I didn't know what happened between them. And he said, "Oh, Alan was not serious about me, or not asking about me." I said, "Yes." I told him that I am going to meet you. And then when I came back to Alan and asked him the same questions, what Peter was telling you about me. Just আমাদের প্রেমিক প্রেমিকার মতো, আমাদের যেমন করে। পিটার বলছে এই কথা, অ্যালেন বলছে ওই কথা। কেমন আছে অ্যালেন? ও বলছে কেমন আছে পিটার? So they were separated at that time. And I was really, I couldn't ask Alan anything about Peter, but Alan was so, it seemed to me that at that time, he was another Allen Ginsberg. The dangerous man that I said, it vanished. He was rather a confused man between the fear of death, as she has pointed out, the fear of death, between fear of death and wisdom of nirvana. We should forget ganja smoking. We should forget that he stood naked in front of the Kali temple. And I have seen the picture in his office in Times Square. He's standing naked. You forget everything. You just imagine a tormented mind who came to India in search of wisdom, in search of a power that comes from eternity. That was the real Allen Ginsberg. You forget ganja, hashish, LSD. These were all exterior things. But his soul was innocent. And it was immortal, as he said in his poems. And he was waiting, possibly, he was waiting for a message. We don't know from where it was exactly.
Okay. Yeah, so another thing I want to ask Deborah is, of course, Ginsberg's complex relationship with Molloy Rai Chaudhuri, right? The Hungryalists. And of course with Shokti and Shunil, the vortex, of the poets, that he was drawn to. And he was also drawn to the politics that played out between them. And you have given a detailed account of the small tiffs here and there, the minute, in fact. So can you talk about his, because he was very unlike, as you said, unlike Molloy Rai Chaudhuri, but he was still fascinated by the Hungryalists because he collected all their, manifestos. It's there in the archive as well. So How do you reconcile that?
Well, it's in the archive because Malay sent them
Yeah,
to him.
yeah.
I think in the wake of the arrest of Malay and some of the other
Yes.
poets who become involved with the Hungry List, first of all, there was when Shunil was invited to Iowa instead of Shakti, that created a rift
Yes.
in their very deep friendship. And I think almost in reaction, Shakti joined the Hungry List. And so it was, you could say that Ginsberg was a kind of divisive figure in this
Yes.
pool because he, you know, and then when they got in trouble, the only person they could think to write, because they had no politicians in their pocket, was Allen Ginsberg. So I think he did a lot to, he found one of them a job in Paris. Malay was particularly insistent that he help him, he get him to
Yes.
America, that he give him money, that, you know, he was really relentless, you know, in the letters that I read at Stanford. And, you know, Allen had no real money of his own, but that was hard for Malay to understand. But it was like, you know, he came and they had this moment of incredible harmony and exchange, but there was also something deeply destabilizing about
them, yes.
time in Calcutta. And I think that's sort of harder to romanticize.
I agree.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of romantic mythification about the way Hungryalists influence Ginsberg, which I don't think is the case, because he may be intrigued by them, by their poetry, by probably the anti-establishment streak in them. But do you think there is a
But
real
I think, like, you know, you read parts of Howl, but I think also Ginsberg had like a kind of stand-up
Right.
medium to him. He was always exaggerating things. He was amusing himself.
Right.
He knew that he was sort of saying some shocking things, but it was really more just about.
Yeah.
So I think like, whereas Malay was coming from a point of anger, of being, you know, left out or marginalized. I mean, you come from a refugee family. Sunil came from a refugee family.
Right.
Tarapada Roy came from a refugee
Right.
family. I mean, they were not, you know, being received in polite literary society in Calcutta. So that's really important part of their story too.
I think one of the reasons he gelled well with Calcutta, this is my reading, is because he went beyond the Bhadralok Calcutta.
Right,
You know, and went into the.
He was first introduced to the Bhadralok,
But
and he thought they were really boring, and
Yeah.
you know, and so that's why he would say things.
I think
like,
also the openness with which they embraced Ginsberg
Yeah.
without any of what I call the baggage that we normally, the Bhadraloks, have.
Yeah.
And all this baggage about sexuality, all this baggage about intellectual, you know, capital that we have. I think he met them.
Even it was shocking in America.
Yeah,
Only in India.
but still, I think he got a kind of an ally with the kind of, you know, readings that they were making. They probably opened their arms more willfully to Ginsberg. Is that right?
Yeah, and I remember reading this letter from the director of the Iowa International Writing when he was sort of making the case. Paul Engel, yeah. Paul Engel, by the way, the Iowa International Writing was actually subsidized by the CIA. That's really important to know. And he said,
Paul Engel came here.
yeah.
Paul Engel came to Bombay, came to Kolkata, yes.
And but Paul Engel described Allen's trip to Calcutta as like he did the impossible of bringing dirt to Calcutta.
Yeah.
So that was sort of his sort of, you know, the way that he looked at, you know, both Ginsberg and Calcutta. He's
Yeah.
sort of really quintessential, you know, arts administrator.
I get it. So basically, I mean, we will, of course.
Pinaki, just one point
Yeah.
about Bengali poetry and American poetry.
Yeah.
I must say that Allen Ginsberg was reborn in Kolkata. He got a new life as a poet. He was born here as a Bengali poet. Most of his poems, if you check the Bengali materials, the Bengali magazines, especially the little magazines, they carried Allen's poems like they were carrying Shunil's poems. So in a way, most of the readers at the time, without knowing anything about this man coming from all the way from America and living here for a few months, and just when he was seen in the magazine, I mean, his works were translated into Bengali, it was a new life.
Right.
A poet is reborn in a new language with translations. That was done at that time. And I must say, kudos to Sunil Gangopadhyay, Tarapada Rai, Shakti Chattopadhyay, Jyotirmoy Datta. They made it possible. And the materials that you have, so many people can research, so many people can write books on the Bengali materials available to us.
Okay. Yeah, but Shakti probably was not a great translator. I mean, yeah.
He was like Alan, as she said brilliantly, he was always exaggerating things. And that was the madness of a poet and genius of a poet.
Yeah. So, before we end it, of course, there is a beautiful, there's a poem that we all know, and it's September on Jashore Road. And this will be read by Ahon, and then, of course, it will be followed by translation.
Yeah,
Yes.
first English and then translation.
Yeah.
Millions of babies watching the skies, bellies swollen with big round eyes on Josor Road. Long bamboo huts, no place to shit but sand channel ruts. Millions of fathers in rain, millions of mothers in pain, millions of brothers in woe, millions of sisters nowhere to go. 1 million aunts are dying for bread. 1 million uncles lamenting the dead. Grandfather millions, homeless and sad. Grandmother millions, silently mad. Millions of daughters walk in the mud. Millions of children wash in the flood. 1 million girls vomit and groan. Millions of families hopeless, alone. Millions of souls, 1971, homeless on Joshua Road under grey sun. 1 million are dead, the million who can walk toward Calcutta from East Pakistan. Taxi, September along Joshua Road, ox cart skeletons drag charcoal load. Past watery fields through rain, flood ruts, dung cakes on tree trunks, plastic roof huts, wet processions. Families walk, stunted boys, big heads, don't talk. Look, bony skulls and silent round eyes, starving black angels in human disguise. Mother squats, weeping, and points to her sons, standing thin-legged like elderly nuns, small-bodied hands to their mouths in prayer. 5 months small food since they settled there. On one floor mat with small empty pot, father lifts up his hands at their lot. Tears come to their mother's eye. Pain makes Mother Maya cry. 2 children together in palm roof shade stare at me, no word is said. Rice ration, lentils, 1 time a week. Milk powder for war, weary infants meek. No vegetable money or work for the man. Rice lasts 4 days, eat while they can, then children starve 3 days in a row and vomit their next food until they eat slow. On Joshua Road, mother wept at my knees. Bengali tongue cried, "Mister, please, identity card torn up on the floor, husband," still waits at the camp office door. It goes on, but we'll end there for now, and I think Subodh will read maybe the closing stanzas of the poem in Bangla.
I translated this poem 15 years ago. Hello? Yeah. So I did it 15 years before, but I did it again for this session. And it's a completely new translation now. I mean, just imagine the refugees in millions coming to Kolkata, all along Joshua Road. And it was September. Sunil was accompanying him and others. And you just imagine what was happening. The whole world was concerned at that time. Millions and millions of refugees coming to Kolkata. And you just imagine the pictures you have seen. The station, railway station like Shalda. It was, littered with the people, from East Pakistan. And he wrote this poem. And it was like a volcano of anger against the war. Is the conscience of the poet. And this poem he wrote, and after a few days, he got it published in the New York Times. A poem getting published in the page of New York Times, you just imagine at that time. অসংখ্য শিশু আকাশে তাকিয়ে আছে, পেট ফুলে গেছে, চোখগুলো বড় বড়, বাঁশের বস্তি, এই তো যশোর রোড, টয়লেট নেই, পথে টয়লেট করো। হাজারে হাজারে বাবা আজ বৃষ্টিতে, কি যে ক্রন্দন সহস্র জননীতে, হাজার হাজার ছেলেরা নির্যাতিত, মেয়েদের কোনো দেশ নেই, তারা ভীত। লক্ষ লক্ষ কন্যা কাদায় হাঁটে, লক্ষ লক্ষ শিশু স্নান করে মাঠে, সহস্র মেয়ে বমি চিৎকার করে, পরিবারগুলো একা একা শুধু মরে। লক্ষ আত্মা 1971, 1971, লক্ষ আত্মা 1971, সূর্যের নিচে গৃহহীন সে যশোর। লক্ষ লক্ষ মৃত পার হয়ে যায়, পূর্ববঙ্গ চলেছে কলকাতায়। দুটি ছেলে, তারা খেজুর পাতার ঘরে আমাকে দেখছে, বলছে না কোনো কথা। ভাত নেই, ডাল সপ্তাহে একদিন, গুঁড়ো দুধ খেতে লাগে ক্ষীণ সরলতা। আমার পা ধরে কাঁদছে যশোর মাতা, বাংলা কাঁদছে, কাঁদছে গাছের পাতা, রেশন কাগজ মেঝেতে গড়ায় ছেঁড়া, শিবিরের থেকে হয়নি কারোর ফেরা। আর কত লাখ শিশু হবে নরবলি, ভগবানদের দিতে হবে অঞ্জলি। যারা ভালো তারা সৈন্যকে দেবে কর, শিশু মেরে যারা হচ্ছে ক্ষমতাধর। প্রেমিক প্রেমিকা জোটেনি তাদের রুটি, কাকার মাথায় গর্ত একটি দুটি, বোনেদের মাথা গড়াবে মাটিতে কত, বাবারা নীরব অথবা নত। লাস্ট স্ট্যান্জা। অসংখ্য শিশু কাতর যন্ত্রণায়, লক্ষ মায়েরা বৃষ্টিতে ধুয়ে যায়, লক্ষ লক্ষ ছেলেরা কষ্টে মাগো। ভালো জায়গাটা বলতে পারো কোথায়? ভালো জায়গাটা কোথায়? বলো কোথায়? নমস্কার, থ্যাংক ইউ।
Okay. So that's a wonderful end to the session. If there are questions, maybe we can take one questions. Want to ask something? So can you just give the mic and so please make it short. Yeah, it should be a question. I mean, I
Question, not observation.
yeah, not an
Yeah, as we all know, Alan was a great promoter of his friends and many fellow artists. But we also know that he really promoted women, writers, artists. Can you explain, tell us a little more about that?
Yeah, I mean, that's why I was a little hesitant to write about him, because, I trying to find a place to identify with him. And he did have women friends, but, and someone has accused him of hating women, which I think is not true. But I don't think he was interested in, just wasn't interested in women unless they were his mother, and Kali, but he did seek out women gurus. While he was in India, there was the poet that he read.
Who? Kamala Das?
No. Anyways, it's been a long time since
Okay.
I read this book, but yeah. So, but I think he just wasn't interested in them.
Right.
Sorry.
Yeah, so I think we are coming to, we have to sort of end the session. I mean, discussions on Ginsberg is like, as I can say, can go on, but it's also important, I mean, to end it, to separate the chaff from the grain from the chaff, because, there are a lot of myths around Ginsberg. So I think it would be great if, we can read something more definitive.
Just one thing, as I must thank Malavika for doing this, and I tell you one thing, that Kolkata is going to celebrate Allen Ginsberg. We are planning to have a 7-day celebration. So it's like it's celebrating poetry from America and poetry from India. So it's time to regenerate the spirit of Allen Ginsberg. Thank you.
On that note, I mean, we end this. Thank you so much for being patient. Thank you.
Yes, of course.